The stars had been calling Earth for 60 years. Every week, sometimes every day, signals came from the darkness of space. They came in hundreds of languages. They came with promises of friendship, threats of war, and offers of trade. They came from species with scales, with fur, with bodies made of light and minds made of crystal. They all wanted the same thing. They wanted Earth to answer. Earth never did. Admiral stood at the window of the Deep Space Command Center, hidden 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. He was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many secrets. Behind him, dozens of screens showed the movement of alien ships throughout the galaxy. His people had been watching for decades. They knew the names of 4,000 species. They knew their weapons, their weaknesses, and their lies. The door opened and Doctor walked in. She was the woman who had first decoded alien transmissions 40 years ago. Now her hair was white, but her mind was sharper than ever. She carried a tablet filled with the latest intelligence. "They are getting impatient," she said. Did not turn from the window. "They have been impatient for 60 years. What changed?" The Galactic Council held a meeting yesterday. High Speaker gave a speech about Earth. Touched her tablet and a recording played. The voice was translated into Korean, but the arrogance needed no translation. "The humans sit on their little rock and play with fire," the alien voice said. "They have no starships. They have no voice. They are children who refuse to grow up. Perhaps it is time we decide their future for them." Finally turned, his face showed nothing. "What did the council decide?" "Nothing yet, but there will be a vote next month. Wants to declare Earth an unclaimed world." "Unclaimed," repeated. The word tasted like poison. "We have lived here for 300,000 years. Our ancestors painted on cave walls before their species learned to walk, and they call us unclaimed." Nodded. "To them, a world without starships is a world without owners. It is their law." "It is their excuse," corrected. "They have used that law to steal 1,000 worlds. They take the land, the water, and the people. They call it bringing civilization. We have another word for it." The door opened again. President Minu entered, followed by 2 guards. He was younger than both and only 45, but the weight of his position had put lines on his face. He led a united Earth, something that would have seemed impossible a century ago. The threat from the stars had done what nothing else could. It had made humanity one people. "I received your message," Minu said. "Show me everything." Led them to the main display. A hologram of the galaxy appeared, with thousands of colored dots representing different species and their territories. In one small corner, a blue dot sat alone: Earth. "The Galactic Council controls 80% of the known galaxy," explained. "They have 4,000 member species, but real power belongs to only 12. These 12 species conquered the others long ago. They call themselves the Founders. They write the laws, and the laws always favor them." Added, "Their favorite law is the silence doctrine. Any world that does not respond to contact within one standard cycle, about 50 Earth years, can be declared unclaimed. The Council, then, divides its resources among members." "Resources," Minu said quietly. "You mean people?" "Yes, many species were enslaved this way. They were taken from their homes before they could develop space travel. The Council calls them client races. They serve the Founders in exchange for protection." Minu studied the hologram, "And they think Earth will be next." "They are certain of it," said. "They have scanned our planet from orbit. They have seen our cities, our cars, our airplanes. To them, we are primitives playing with toys. They have no idea what we have built in secret." He touched a control, and the hologram changed. Now it showed the solar system, but this version was very different from any public map. Hidden symbols appeared on moons, asteroids, and in the darkness between planets. Hundreds of them. 60 years ago, when the first alien signal reached Earth, our governments made a choice," said. "We would not answer. We would not reveal ourselves. Instead, we would watch, learn, and prepare. Every piece of alien technology we could study, we studied. Every weapon we could improve, we improved. Every ship they lost in our system, we recovered and rebuilt. Minyu stared at the hidden bases. How many ships do we have? 50,000 warships, 200,000 support vessels, weapons that can disable alien technology at range, shields that can survive their strongest attacks, and soldiers, millions of soldiers who have trained their whole lives for a war they hoped would never come. Spoke softly. We did not want this, President. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to grow at our own pace to reach the stars in our own time, but they would not allow it. To them, our silence was not a choice. It was a weakness. Minyu was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "When will they vote?" "In 32 days," answered. "If the vote passes, they will send a colonization fleet. Based on their usual pattern, it will arrive within 3 months. And if we reveal ourselves now, if we answer their signals and show them what we have built," shook her head, "it would change nothing. The founders do not respect strength they have not tested. They would see our fleet as a challenge, not a warning. War would come faster, not slower." "Then what do you suggest?" Turned back to the window, looking up at stars he had watched his entire life. "We wait. We let them vote. We let them send their fleet. And when they arrive expecting sheep, they will find wolves." "That is a dangerous game," Minyu said. "Yes, but it is the only game that ends with them understanding the truth. Earth stayed silent because we chose silence. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are not afraid. We simply had nothing to say to species who saw us as prey." Placed her hand on the president's arm. "There is something else you should know. I have been studying their culture for 40 years. Do you know what they fear most? It is not weapons or fleets. It is the unknown. Every species they have conquered, they understood first. They studied them, found their weaknesses, and then attacked. Earth is the first world that refused to be studied. We are the first unknown." Minyu looked at the blue dot on the hologram. His home, his people, 7 billion lives that the galaxy saw as resources to be divided. "Then let us remain unknown," he said, "until the moment we choose to be seen." Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I have waited 60 years for someone to say those words." "And the people," Minyu asked, "do they know what is coming?" "No, and they must not know. Panic would destroy everything we have built. When the time comes, they will learn the truth. They will learn that their governments protected them in secret for 6 decades. Some will be angry, most will be grateful." "And if we lose?" Did not answer immediately. He watched the stars, thinking of all the species out there who had faced the same choice. Surrender or fight, slavery or death. Most had chosen surrender. Most had not had a choice. "We will not lose," he finally said. "They have numbers, they have experience. They have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years, but we have something they have never faced before." "What is that?" "Patience. We waited 60 years in silence, building, preparing, learning. They cannot imagine that kind of discipline. To them, silence means weakness. They are about to learn what silence really means." Outside the window, hidden from all alien sensors, the Earth continued its slow spin through the darkness. 7 billion people lived their lives, unaware of the war that was coming, unaware of the fleet that protected them, unaware that their silence had been a weapon all along. And in the cold spaces between planets, 50,000 warships waited in the dark, ready to remind the galaxy why some silences should never be broken. The station called Prime was the heart of the Galactic Council. It floated in the center of a great nebula, a structure so large that small moons orbited around it. Millions of aliens from thousands of species lived there, worked there, and made decisions that shaped the fate of worlds. Today, they would decide the fate of Earth. Ambassador walked through the crowded corridors with her heart beating fast but her face showing nothing. She wore the robes of a minor trading species, her face hidden by a hood that many cultures used for religious reasons. Beside her walked her security chief, disguised as her servant. They had spent 3 months preparing for this mission. Now they were walking into the center of enemy power. "Stay calm," whispered in Korean, knowing no translator would recognize the language. "We are just traders here to observe, nothing more." "I am calm," replied, but her hands were shaking inside her sleeves. The grand chamber of the council was a massive dome that could hold representatives from all 4,000 member species. Today, it was full, had never seen so many different forms of life in one place. There were creatures with scales that sparkled like gems. There were beings made of light that floated above their seats. There were insect-like aliens that clicked and buzzed in languages she had studied for years. And at the center of it all, on a platform raised above everyone else, sat the 12 founders. High Speaker was the leader of the founders. His species had been the first to achieve space travel in this region of the galaxy, and they had never let anyone forget it. He was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were black and cold like a shark's eyes. When he spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. "My fellow citizens of the cosmos," began, his voice booming through translation devices, "we gather today to discuss a matter that has troubled this council for 60 cycles. The silent world, the mute planet, the place its primitive inhabitants call Earth." Felt her jaw tighten. She forced herself to breathe slowly. "For 60 cycles we have extended the hand of friendship to these creatures," continued. "We have sent them messages of peace. We have offered them membership in our great civilization. And how have they responded? With silence, with ignorance, with the stubbornness of beasts who cannot understand the gift they have been offered." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many species nodded their agreement. Notice that the smaller, weaker species stayed quiet. They knew better than to speak. "I have studied these humans," said, speaking the word like it was something dirty. "They are a primitive species. They fight among themselves for scraps of land. They poison their own air and water. They have not even reached their nearest moon in generations. They are, in every way that matters, animals waiting to be tamed." One of the other founders, a creature covered in bright feathers, raised a wing. "High Speaker, the silence doctrine requires 60 cycles of no response. Has this requirement been met?" "It has," confirmed. "Earth has been offered contact 147 times. They have responded to none. Under our sacred law, this makes them an unclaimed world. Their resources, their land, and yes, their population can be divided among deserving council members." The chamber erupted in excited noise. Watched as species that had seemed bored suddenly became very interested. She understood why. Earth had something rare: clean water, rich soil, moderate climate, and 7 billion workers who could be put to use. "I propose," announced, raising all 4 of his arms, "the Terran Reclamation Act. Earth will be divided into sectors. Each sector will be assigned to a council member based on their contribution to our civilization. The humans themselves will be classified as a client species. They will serve their assigned masters in exchange for the privilege of continued existence." Felt's hand on her arm warning her to stay still. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them what waited for any fleet that approached Earth, but she stayed silent. That was her mission. Watch, record, report. A large insect-like creature stood up. Its voice buzzed through the translator. "What value do humans have as workers? Are they strong? Are they intelligent?" Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "They are neither strong nor intelligent, but they are many and they breed quickly. They can perform simple tasks: mining, farming, cleaning, the work that no civilized species wishes to do." "And if they resist?" another voice asked. "They will not resist," said with confidence. "They have no weapons that can harm us. They have no ships that can escape us. They are alone in their little corner of space, and they do not even know we are coming. This will not be a war. It will be a harvest." The word hit like a physical blow. Harvest. That was what they thought of her people. Crops to be gathered, animals to be collected. Things, not people. Raised his voice for his final argument. Some may ask why we do this. Some may say we should leave these humans alone, let them develop in peace, let them reach the stars on their own. To those voices I say this: we are the masters of this galaxy. We did not become masters by waiting. We did not build our empire by showing mercy to lesser creatures. The humans have proven themselves unworthy of recognition. They had 60 cycles to join us, and they chose silence. Now we will choose their future for them. He paused, looking around the chamber with those cold black eyes. I have one more thing to say about these humans. I have read the reports of our observers. I have studied their history, their culture, their beliefs, and I have come to a conclusion. These creatures have no souls. The chamber went completely quiet. They kill each other over minor differences in belief, continued. They destroy their own planet for short-term profit. They abandon their weak and worship their strong. They have no concept of universal harmony, no understanding of cosmic purpose. They are biological machines, nothing more. Giving them the status of sentient beings would be an insult to every truly sentient species in this chamber. Felt tears forming in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She recorded every word, every insult, every lie. Therefore, concluded, I propose that humans be classified not as a client species but as a resource species. They will have no rights under council law. They will be property to be used as their owners see fit. This is not cruelty. This is simply recognizing the truth of what they are. The vote came quickly after that. Species after species raised their support. The founders voted first, all 12 in favor, then the major powers, then the minor powers, then the client species who had no real choice. When it was done, the result was unanimous. 4,000 species had voted to declare humanity soulless. 4,000 species had agreed to divide Earth among themselves. 4,000 species had signed the death warrant of human civilization. Smiled his cold smile. The Terran Reclamation Act is passed. A fleet will be assembled immediately. Within 3 cycles, Earth will belong to the Council. The chamber filled with celebration. Species that would receive pieces of Earth congratulated each other. They discussed which resources they wanted, which regions they would claim, how many humans they would need for their mines, their farms, their factories, and slipped out of the chamber quietly. They walked through the corridors without speaking, past aliens who were already planning their piece of the harvest. They reached their small ship, hidden in a docking bay reserved for minor traders, and sealed the door behind them. Only then did allow herself to react. She sat down heavily, her whole body shaking. Did you record everything? She asked. Nodded. Every word, every vote, every species that bid on our people. Send it to Earth. Send it now. Use the secure channel. While worked at the communication station, composed her message to President Minu. She chose her words carefully. They would be the most important words she had ever written. Mr. President, she began. Today the Galactic Council voted to declare humanity a resource species. They have authorized a fleet to colonize Earth. They believe we are animals without souls, fit only for slavery. High Speaker called us mute beasts. He called us biological machines. He said giving us rights would insult real sentient beings. She paused, steadying her voice. They have made their choice. They have shown us exactly what they think of us. They laughed while they divided our planet. They celebrated while they sold our children. They do not see us as people. They never will. She took a deep breath. Now we make our choice. I recommend we show them exactly how wrong they are. Show them what silence really means. Show them what happens when you insult a species that has been preparing for war longer than most of them have been alive. She ended the message with 4 words that would change the galaxy forever. Make them remember us. The message flew across the stars at speeds that broke the laws of physics, carried by technology the Council did not know existed. It reached Earth in minutes, not months. President Minu read it alone, in the quiet of his office, as the sun set over a world that did not know it had been declared property. When he finished reading, he called Admiral. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "They are coming." And in the darkness of space, 50,000 ships began to wake from their long sleep, ready to teach the galaxy a lesson in respect. The colonization fleet entered the solar system like a parade of giants. 12,000 warships, each one larger than any building on Earth. They came in perfect formation, their hulls shining with lights of every color. Behind them came transport ships, ready to carry away Earth's resources, ready to carry away Earth's people. Fleet Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screens. He had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had crushed rebellions, enslaved populations, and burned cities to ash. Earth would be his 48th world, the easiest conquest of his life. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find any ships or weapons." His officers worked at their stations. Minutes passed. They found satellites. They found space stations orbiting the Earth. They found old robots on the Moon and Mars, but they found no weapons, no warships, no defenses. "Commander," one officer reported, "the humans have nothing. Their most advanced ships cannot even leave their own orbit. This planet is completely undefended." Allowed himself a smile. High Speaker had been right. These humans were primitives. They did not even know death was coming. "Open a channel to all ships," he said. "We will give them one final chance to surrender. Let no one say we were not merciful." The channel opened, spoke in a voice that would be translated into every human language. His words would reach every television, every radio, every phone on the planet. "People of Earth, I am Fleet Commander of the Galactic Council. Your world has been claimed under the Silence Doctrine. You will be divided among council members and put to work as your new masters see fit. Do not resist. Resistance will result in death. Surrender now and some of you may survive. You have 1 hour to respond." He closed the channel and waited, expecting panic, crying, begging. What he got instead was silence. On Earth, in the Deep Space Command Center, General watched the alien fleet through sensors that could count the rivets on their hulls. She was 40 years old, born in the same year the first alien signal reached Earth. She had trained her whole life for this moment. "How many ships?" President Minu asked through the communication channel. 12,000 warships, 3,000 transports, about 15 million soldiers total. "And our fleet?" 50,000 warships, 200,000 support vessels, 8 million soldiers, but our soldiers are worth 10 of theirs. Minu was quiet for a moment. "They think we are helpless." "Yes, sir." "Then let us correct their mistake." General turned to her communication officer. "Open a channel, all frequencies, every language we know." The channel opened, spoke, and her words reached not just the alien fleet, but every species in the galaxy that was listening. "This is General of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has entered our space without permission. Your leader has declared our people property. Your council has voted to enslave our children." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You were warned by our silence. Now hear our voice." On the bridge of his flagship frowned. This was not what he expected. Primitives did not speak like this. They did not threaten, they begged. "What is she talking about?" he asked. "What voice? They have no ships, they have no weapons." His sensor officer suddenly went pale. "Commander, I am detecting energy signatures." "Where?" "Everywhere." The darkness of space began to change. All around the solar system, ships appeared from nothing. They emerged from asteroids that had been hollowed out decades ago. They rose from craters on moons. They dropped their camouflage and revealed themselves in numbers that made blood run cold. 50,000 contacts, his officer reported, voice shaking. "No more, they keep appearing. I count 60,000, 70,000. "That is impossible," whispered. "They are primitives, they cannot have built a fleet." But the evidence was on his screens. Human ships surrounded his fleet on all sides. They were smaller than his vessels, but there were so many. And they moved with a speed and precision that should not have been possible for a species that supposedly had not reached its own moon. General spoke again. "You came here expecting sheep. You found wolves. You have one chance. Surrender now and we will allow you to leave. Refuse and we will show you what 60 years of preparation looks like." Felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. But he was a commander of the Galactic Council. He had never surrendered. He would not surrender to primitives. "All ships battle formation," he ordered. "We outnumber their soldiers. We have superior technology. We will crush these animals and bring their heads back to the Council as trophies." His fleet began to move. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. 12,000 ships prepared to attack. Doctor sat at her control station on a moon base that officially did not exist. She was the scientist who had spent 30 years developing humanity's greatest weapon, the Prometheus array. It had never been tested in real combat, until now. "The enemy fleet is powering weapons," her assistant reported. "Good, let them." Touch the activation switch. Prometheus array online, targeting all non-human technology within range, firing in 3, 2, 1. The weapon made no sound. It produced no visible beam. It simply sent out a pulse of energy on a frequency that had taken decades to discover. A frequency that disrupted the basic technology of every known alien species. On its flagship, every light went out. Every screen went dark. Every weapon went silent. The great ship drifted, dead in space, along with 11,000 others. "What happened?" screamed in the darkness. "Report." But there was no one to report. His communication systems were dead. His engines were dead. Even the air recycling systems were failing. His mighty warship had become a tomb. General watched the enemy fleet drift helplessly. All enemy vessels disabled. They have no power, no weapons, no shields. President Minu's voice came through the channel. "Give them one more chance to surrender. I want the galaxy to see that we are not like them." Opened a channel. "Fleet Commander, your ships are disabled. Your weapons are useless. Surrender now and we will rescue your crews. Refuse and we will leave you to die in the darkness. You have 5 minutes." 6,000 ships surrendered within the first minute. Their crews, panicking in the dark, begged for rescue. They had come to enslave. Now they were the ones asking for mercy. But refused. He would not surrender to primitives. He ordered his crew to repair their systems by any means necessary. He would fight with backup systems if he had to. "Commander," his chief engineer said in the darkness, "we have emergency power. Our backup systems are coming online. Basic weapons only, no shields." "It will be enough. We still have 6,000 ships. These humans cannot have enough weapons to destroy us all." He was wrong. Captain sat in the command chair of the Silent Fury, humanity's flagship. He was 35 years old, a pilot since the age of 16. He had flown every type of ship humanity had ever built. Now he commanded the most powerful vessel Earth had ever created. "Captain," his weapons officer reported, 6,000 enemy ships are powering up backup systems. They are preparing to attack. Then let us remind them why backup systems exist." He touched his communication channel. "All units, attack pattern Omega. Concentrate fire on enemy command ships. No mercy for those who showed none to us." The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human ships moved like dancers, faster and more agile than anything the aliens had ever seen. Human weapons fired beams of energy that cut through alien hulls like paper. Human pilots, trained in simulations their whole lives, fought with the skill of veterans. Watched from his crippled flagship as his fleet burned. Ship after ship exploded into fire and debris. His commanders screamed for orders, but there were no orders to give. They were not fighting equals. They were being slaughtered by a species they had called animals. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "They were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to be helpless." In 11 minutes, 6,000 ships were destroyed. 60,000 alien soldiers were dead. Humanity had lost 12 ships, 400 soldiers. When it was over, Captain looked at the debris floating in space, the remains of a fleet that had come to harvest his people. He felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. "Rescue operations," he ordered. "Pick up survivors from the surrendered ships. Treat them with dignity. We are not like them." General contacted the surviving commanders of the enemy fleet. "You are now prisoners of Earth. You will be treated fairly. You will be fed, housed, and eventually returned to your people. But first, you will carry a message." She transmitted a data package to every surviving ship. Inside was a recording of the battle. Every moment, from the disabling of the fleet to the destruction of those who refused to surrender. "Take this recording to the Galactic Council," said. "Show them what happens when you insult humanity. Show them what 60 years of silence was building. And tell High Speaker that we are coming to collect his apology. In person." The surviving transports limped away from Earth, carrying the message that would shake the galaxy. Behind them, the human fleet stood victorious, watching them go. On Earth, President Minu addressed his people for the first time. He told them the truth, all of it, the 60 years of secrecy, the hidden fleet, the battle that had just been won, and the message humanity would now send to the stars. "We remained silent because we were wise," he said. "We prepared in secret because we knew this day would come. And now we speak with a voice that the galaxy will never forget. We are humanity. We are not property. We are not resources. We are not animals to be harvested. And anyone who forgets this truth will learn it the way this fleet learned it, in fire and silence." The people of Earth looked up at the stars that night. For the first time in 60 years, they knew they were not alone in the universe, but they also knew something else. They were not afraid. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 4,000 species sat in their seats, staring at the holographic recording that played above them. They watched as their mighty fleet was disabled in seconds. They watched as 6,000 ships burned. They watched as humanity, the species they had declared property, destroyed the greatest military force the Council had ever assembled. When the recording ended, no one spoke. No one moved. Even the 12 founders sat frozen in their seats, their faces showing emotions that ranged from shock to terror. High Speaker was the first to break the silence. His voice was weak, nothing like the confident roar he had used to condemn humanity. "This must be a trick, some kind of deception. The humans cannot have built such a fleet. Our observers reported nothing." "Your observers," a cold voice answered, "saw only what we wanted them to see." The chamber doors opened. Ambassador walked in, no longer hiding in the robes of a minor trader. She wore the black uniform of the United Earth Defense Force. Behind her walked a squad of 20 Earth Marines. Their weapons were not drawn, but every alien in the chamber knew those weapons could end lives in an instant. Walk to the center of the chamber, to the speaking platform where had stood when he called humanity soulless. She looked up at the founders, at the thousands of species who had voted to enslave her people. She felt their fear. She did not enjoy it, but she understood it. "I stood in this chamber 1 month ago," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the dome. "I wore a disguise, pretending to be a trader from a minor species. I watched you vote to divide my planet. I heard you bid on my people like they were cattle. And I heard High Speaker declare that humans have no souls." She turned to face directly. His forearms were trembling. "Do you remember those words, High Speaker? Do you remember calling us mute beasts, biological machines? Do you remember saying that giving us rights would insult real sentient beings?" Tried to speak, but no words came. "I recorded every word. Every species that bid on our oceans, our forests, our children. I have the names. I have the amounts. I know exactly how much you thought we were worth." She touched a control on her wrist, and a new hologram appeared above the chamber. President Minu, larger than life, looking down at the assembled species with eyes that held no mercy. "People of the Galactic Council," Minu began, "for 60 years we listened to your signals. We learned your languages, we studied your history, we watched how you treated species that could not defend themselves, and we made a choice. We chose silence." The hologram showed images of Earth over the decades, cities being built, factories working day and night, ships being constructed in hidden bases. "You thought our silence meant weakness. You thought we were too primitive to respond. You were wrong. We stayed silent because we were listening, learning, preparing. Every piece of technology your ships lost in our system, we recovered. Every weapon you developed, we found a counter. Every strategy you used against other species, we studied until we could defeat it." The images changed to show the battle. Human ships moving with impossible speed. Alien vessels exploding into fire. "You sent 12,000 ships to harvest us. We destroyed half of them in 11 minutes. We did not do this because we wanted war. We did this because you gave us no choice. You declared our children property. You voted to take our world. You laughed while you divided our future." Minu's voice grew harder. "Now hear the consequences. Earth is not joining the Galactic Council. We will never join an organization that treats sentient beings as resources. Instead, we are creating something new. The Alliance of Free Worlds. Any species that has been oppressed by the Council is welcome to join us. Any species that seeks protection from founder aggression will receive it, and any species that tries to treat another as property will face the same fate as your colonization fleet." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species shouted in anger, others whispered in fear, and many, the smaller species who had lived under founder rule for generations, looked at each other with something that had been forbidden for centuries. Hope raised her hand for silence. "There is more." Another hologram appeared. This one showed 12 star systems on the edge of Council space, systems where the most oppressed species lived, systems that the founders had exploited for. "These 12 systems are now under Earth's protection," announced. "Any Council ships that enter these systems without permission will be destroyed. Any attempt to retake these systems will be considered an act of war against all humanity." One of the founders, the feathered creature who had asked about the silence doctrine, stood up. "You cannot do this. These systems belong to the Council. The species there are our clients, our property." "Your property," his voice was ice. "Listen to yourself. You speak of people as things. You treat sentient beings as objects to be owned. This is why humanity stayed silent. We knew that speaking to you as equals would be pointless. You do not understand equality. You only understand power." She gestured to the hologram of the destroyed fleet. "Now you understand our power, and now you will understand our terms." President Minu spoke again. "The Sol Accords. These are the new laws that will govern the protected systems. First, no species may be declared property. All sentient beings have rights that cannot be taken by vote or conquest. Second, no world may be colonized without the consent of its inhabitants. The silence doctrine is rejected. Silence does not mean surrender. Third, any species that violates these laws will face humanity's fleet. We did not build 50,000 ships to watch them rust. We will use them." He paused, letting the words sink in. "High Speaker, you called us soulless. You declared us unworthy of recognition. You led the vote to harvest our children. Stand and answer for your crimes." All eyes turned to the High Speaker who had ruled the Council for decades, the voice that had condemned countless species to slavery. He stood slowly, his 4 arms hanging limp, his black eyes filled with something he had never felt before: true fear. I was mistaken," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The humans are clearly more advanced than we believed. Perhaps we can negotiate. Perhaps we can find a compromise that. Compromise? Interrupted. You voted to sell our children. You declared us animals. You celebrated our destruction before it even happened. And now you want a compromise. She walked toward him, and the most powerful being in the galaxy stepped backward in fear. There is no compromise, there is only consequence. Your species will be sanctioned. Your trade routes will be closed. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only. For 100 Earth years, you will be what you tried to make us, a minor power, a species that must ask permission instead of giving orders. 100 years, gasped. That will destroy our economy, our culture, our entire way of life. Good's voice held no sympathy. Perhaps in 100 years you will learn what you tried to take from us in one afternoon: dignity, freedom, the right to exist without asking permission. She turned back to face the entire chamber. Let this be a lesson to every species here. Humanity wanted peace. We wanted to grow at our own pace, to reach the stars in our own time. We stayed silent for 60 years, hoping you would leave us alone. You did not. You saw our silence as weakness and our patience as stupidity. You voted to take everything we have and everything we are. Her voice rose, filling the massive dome. We are not weak. We are not stupid. We are not property. We are humanity. We remember every insult. We record every vote, and we repay every debt. If you treat us with respect, we will be the greatest friends you have ever known. If you treat us as prey, we will be the last enemies you ever face. She lowered her voice to almost a whisper, but in the silent chamber, every word was clear. The choice is yours. We have made ours. She turned and walked toward the door, her Marines falling in behind her. At the door, she paused and looked back one final time. One more thing. Some of you in this chamber are from species that have been oppressed for generations. Species that have been called clients when you were slaves. Species that have dreamed of freedom but never dared to hope. We see you. We hear you. And we are coming for you, not to conquer, to liberate. She looked at the smaller species in the back rows, the ones who had stayed quiet during the vote, the ones who had learned to hide their thoughts and swallow their pride. When you are ready, find us. The Alliance of Free Worlds will have a place for you, a place where no one votes on whether you have souls, a place where silence is a choice, not a prison, a place where you are people, not property. She walked out of the chamber, and the doors closed behind her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, one of the small species in the back row stood up. It was a creature with fur and large eyes from a world that had been conquered 3,000 years ago. Its ancestors had been free. It had been born a slave. I believe them, the creature said, its voice trembling. I believe the humans. Another species stood, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. Species that had been silent found their voices. They spoke of hope. They spoke of freedom. They spoke of a future that had seemed impossible 1 hour ago. High Speaker watched his empire begin to crumble. The species he had ruled through fear were no longer afraid. The power he had built through intimidation was meaningless against an enemy that could not be intimidated. He had made a mistake, the greatest mistake in the history of the galaxy. He had insulted the wrong species. He had awakened a sleeping giant. And now, everything he had built was falling apart. On her ship leaving Prime, Ambassador allowed herself a small smile. She had delivered the message. She had made them understand. And somewhere in the galaxy, species that had given up hope were beginning to believe again. The war was not over. It was just beginning. But for the first time in galactic history, the oppressed had a champion, and that champion would never be silent again. 1 year had passed since the day Earth broke its silence. 1 year since a colonization fleet was destroyed in 11 minutes. 1 year since the galaxy learned that humanity was not prey. The universe had changed more in that single year than it had changed in the previous 1,000. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Alliance Command Station, a massive structure that orbited a world called New Hope. The world had been renamed by its inhabitants, a species of gentle giants who had been slaves for 4,000 years. When humanity freed them, they had chosen a new name for their planet, a name that represented what humanity had given them. Below the station, ships from a dozen different species moved in careful patterns. They were training together, learning to fight as one force. Some of them had been enemies a year ago. Now they wore the same symbol on their uniforms, a blue circle with a single star inside, the mark of the Alliance of Free Worlds. "Admiral," a young officer reported, "the graduation ceremony is ready to begin." Nodded and made his way to the observation deck. He felt his age today. 63 years of secrets, of waiting, of preparing for a war that finally came. He had won that war, but wars, he knew, were easier to start than to finish. Doctor was waiting for him on the observation deck. She had been appointed as Earth's galactic ambassador, a role that suited her perfectly. She had spent 40 years learning about alien species. Now she used that knowledge to build bridges instead of weapons. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired, but there is still work to do." "There always is." She smiled and gestured to the viewport. "Look at them. A year ago, most of these species had never spoken to each other. Now they fight together, train together. Some of them are even becoming friends." Watched a human ship fly in formation with vessels from species that had been slaves for generations. The human pilot was young, barely 25. She had grown up knowing nothing of the 60-year secret. Now she was teaching aliens how to defend their own worlds. "We did not plan for this," admitted. "We planned for war, victory, survival. We did not plan for what comes after." "No one ever does, but we are learning, and so are they." The ceremony began an hour later. 500 graduates from the Alliance Academy, the first class ever to include species from outside the Sol system. They stood in neat rows, wearing uniforms that had been designed to fit bodies of every shape and size. Human officers stood beside aliens who towered over them and aliens who barely reached their knees. Captain gave the graduation speech. He had become a hero after the battle, but he did not like being called one. Heroes, he said, did not survive. Professionals did. He taught his graduates to be professionals. "You are the first," he told them. "The first officers of a truly united fleet. Behind you are species that have never stood together. Ahead of you are challenges that no one has ever faced. You will make mistakes. You will face enemies who want to destroy everything we have built, but you will not face them alone." He paused, looking at the faces before him. Human faces, alien faces, all of them wearing the same uniform. The old galaxy was built on fear. The founders ruled because they made others afraid. We are building something different. We are building a galaxy where strength protects the weak instead of exploiting them, where silence is a choice, not a prison, where every species has the right to grow at their own pace, in their own way. He stepped back and Admiral stepped forward. "When you put on that uniform," said, "you accept a responsibility. You are not just soldiers, you are guardians. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. You speak for those who have been silenced, and you fight for those who have forgotten how." He raised his hand in salute. 500 officers saluted back. "Welcome to the Alliance of Free Worlds. Make us proud." After the ceremony, found a quiet corner of the observation deck. He watched the graduates celebrate with their families. Human families, alien families, families that a year ago would have been forbidden to speak to each other. Found him there. She was one of the graduates, a young woman of 22 with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She was also his granddaughter, though few people knew that. "You did not tell me you would be here," she said. "I wanted to surprise you. You never come to public events." "This is not a public event. This is family." He smiled, something he rarely did. "Your grandmother would have been proud. She always said you would do great things." looked out at the stars. I grew up thinking we were alone in the universe. Now I am going to explore it. It still does not feel real. It is real, more real than anything I have ever done. Put his hand on her shoulder. The fleet I built was designed for war. The fleet you will command is designed for peace. That is not a lesser purpose. It is a greater one. Do you think there will be more wars? Yes, the founders are weak now, but they will not stay weak forever. Other powers will rise. Other species will make the same mistakes made. War is part of existence, but so is hope. And hope, I have learned, is stronger than fear. They stood together in silence, watching the stars that had once seemed so distant and dangerous. Now those stars were full of allies, full of friends, full of species that had found their voices because one small planet had refused to lose its own. 2 months later, a transmission reached Earth from the edge of known space. It came from a region no one had explored, sent by a species no one had ever contacted. Doctor was the first to decode it. The message was simple, desperate, afraid. Please, if anyone can hear us, we are alone. We are surrounded by enemies who want to take everything we have. We do not know if anyone peaceful exists in the universe. We do not know if kindness exists beyond our own world, but if it does, if there is anyone out there who believes in something better than conquest, please answer us. Read the message 3 times. She thought about all the transmissions Earth had received 60 years ago, all the signals they had ignored while they prepared for war. She thought about how different things might have been if someone had answered them with kindness instead of threats. She opened a channel. Unknown species, this is Doctor of Earth, ambassador of the Alliance of Free Worlds. We heard your message, we hear you. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. You are not alone. The universe is not only darkness and conquest. There are species who believe in something better, who protect instead of exploit, who answer calls for help instead of ignoring them. We are one of those species, and we are coming to help you. She transmitted the coordinates of Alliance space, the laws of the Sol Accords, the history of Earth, 60-year silence, and what came after. You asked if kindness exists beyond your world. It does. You asked if anyone peaceful exists in the universe. We exist, and we have a message for you, the same message we have given to every species that asked for help. She smiled, remembering the words Ambassador had spoken in the council chamber, words that had become the motto of the Alliance. We see you, we hear you, and no one will ever silence you again. The message flew across the darkness of space, carrying hope to a species that had none. Behind it, a fleet was already being assembled, ships from a dozen worlds, ready to protect strangers they had never met. On Earth, President Minu announced the mission to the public. He called it the first true test of the Alliance. Not a war to be won, but a people to be saved. Millions of volunteers signed up within hours. Was among the first to join. She stood on the bridge of her new ship, looking out at the stars that held so many mysteries. Behind her was a crew of humans and aliens, working together as if they had done it their whole lives. Ahead of her was a species that needed help, a people who had given up hope. She thought about her grandfather's words, about the fleet he had built for war and the fleet she would command for peace. Both were necessary, both were important. But peace, she was learning, was harder than war. It required more courage, more patience, more faith in the possibility of something better. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships, this is Captain, we have a mission, a species in danger, a people who asked for help. We are going to answer them, not with weapons but with hope, not with conquest but with friendship. This is what the Alliance was built for. This is what Earth prepared for. This is why we broke our silence. She took a deep breath. Let us show them what humanity really is. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying the message of Earth to the edges of the unknown. Behind them, the blue planet continued its slow spin through the darkness. 7 billion people looked up at the stars with pride instead of fear. They knew, finally, that they were not alone. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between galaxies, the species that had sent the desperate message waited and hoped. They did not know if their call would be answered. They did not know if kindness truly existed. But for the first time in generations, they allowed themselves to believe. Help was coming. Earth had remained silent for 60 years. Now its voice reached the farthest corners of the universe, not a voice of war, not a voice of revenge, but a voice of hope, a voice that said what every frightened species needed to hear. You are not alone, you never were, and you never will be again. The new dawn had arrived, and it was beautiful.